All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on a topic that gets whispered about a lot in e-commerce circles: Etsy's stealth accounts. You know, for some sellers, they're an absolute lifeline. For others, a massive, high-stakes gamble. So let's figure out what they're really all about.
I want you to just imagine this for a second. You've spent years building your Etsy shop. You've got thousands of great reviews. It's your main source of income. And then one day, poof, it's all gone. Wiped out by a single automated email from Etsy. It's a seller's absolute worst nightmare. And honestly, it's the very thing that forces people to look for a secret backdoor.
So that brings up a really good question. Why do sellers, even successful ones, feel like they have to go underground? You might think it's all about breaking the rules, but it's often not that simple at all. This is what we call the seller's dilemma.
And when you look at the reasons, it gets really interesting. Yeah, of course, getting back online after a suspension is a huge one, especially when you feel like your appeal just vanished into a black hole. But look at the other reasons. It's also a smart business move. You might want to keep your vintage clothing shop totally separate from your new handmade jewelry line. Or maybe you want to test a risky new product idea without it messing with your main brand's reputation. It's about strategy, not just survival.
And that dilemma, well, it leads a lot of sellers to one particular solution: the stealth account. But before we get into the how, we have to be super clear on what a stealth account actually is, and, just as important, what it isn't. The key word here, the most important part, is complete separation. We're not just talking about getting a new email address. No. This is about creating an entirely new digital person, a new name, new payment details, and, this is the critical part, a totally isolated tech footprint. The whole point is to be a ghost in Etsy's machine. And this slide, right here, it lays out the two completely different roads you can take. On one side, you've got the legit, Etsy-approved way. You tell them about your second shop, it has to sell totally different things, and you play by all their rules. But on the other side, that's the stealth path. It's built from the ground up to avoid being detected. And let's make no mistake, it is a direct violation of Etsy's terms of service. Which, of course, brings us to the other player in this cat and mouse game. If you're going to operate in the shadows, you have to understand how the hunter thinks. And believe me, Etsy has become an incredibly sharp digital detective, always scanning for the tiniest, faintest clues that link one account to another. So the first and most obvious trap is your IP address. Just think of it like the return address on a letter you send in the mail. If you log into two different Etsy shops from the same Wi-Fi network at home, that is a massive, flashing red flag for them. It's the easiest dot for Etsy to connect, period. But you know, your IP is just the starting point. Etsy's systems dig way deeper, looking at your browser's unique fingerprint. This is wild. It's made up of dozens of little details, like your screen resolution, the fonts you have installed, your browser plugins. The combination is so unique, it's basically your computer's digital DNA. If Etsy finds a fingerprint match between two accounts, it's game over. And then you've got cookies. These are the little digital breadcrumbs your browser leaves everywhere. And even if you're really good about clearing your history and cookies, some of these trackers are super persistent. They can create these subtle, invisible links between what you thought were two completely separate browsing sessions. And finally, we get to what I call the hard links. This is the stuff that no tech trickery can hide. I mean, if you use the same bank account, the same PayPal, the same phone number, you've basically just handed them the connection on a silver platter. And get this, Etsy's AI is even getting smart enough now to spot things like a similar writing style in your descriptions or the same background in your product photos. Okay, so if that's how Etsy finds you, how on earth do sellers stay hidden? Well, that's where the creation playbook comes in. And this is a super meticulous process where just one tiny mistake can bring the whole thing crashing down. The whole foundation really rests on two main pillars. First, you need a brand new identity. And I mean, every single detail has to be fresh and completely unlinked to your old self. But the second pillar is where most people mess up. You have to build a totally isolated browsing environment. This means using special tools like cloud browsers and residential proxies to literally create a new digital footprint from scratch. So once that foundation is solid, you can't just dive in and start listing 100 items. That's a huge red flag. You have to do what's called a warm-up. For a week or two, you act like a brand new buyer. Browse the site, favorite some items, then you slowly start adding your listings. It's all about not triggering those automated alarms. And of course, the new store itself has to look and feel completely different. New photos, new descriptions, new everything. So this right here, this is basically your toolkit, your shopping list for going stealth. You need an isolated browser to handle the fingerprinting, a residential proxy for a clean IP address, a separate secure email, and a totally independent way to get paid. Think of it like a chain. If even one of those links is weak or worse, connected to your old identity, the whole thing breaks.
So we've looked at the why and the how, but now we're at the most important part of the whole conversation, the final calculation. You have to weigh the risks versus the rewards and ask yourself, is this really worth it? Let's just start with one single, pretty terrifying number, 180. That's how many days Etsy can legally hold onto your money if they suspend your account. We're talking 6 months. Your earnings, your cash flow, just frozen. That is a gigantic financial risk to take on. And the risks, they definitely don't stop there. If they find a link, your new shop is gone instantly. You lose all the money you put into new inventory, your listing fees, and hey, depending on where you live, using false identity info could have some serious legal blowback. And if you get caught, you are right back to square one, only this time they know who you are.
You know, this quote right here, it perfectly sums up the whole gamble. It's saying it's not impossible. If your setup is absolutely flawless, a stealth account could theoretically run forever. But that margin for error, it's razor thin. And most people who fail get caught in the first month because of one small, careless mistake during setup. Which brings us right back to that big question we started with. Is a stealth account a necessary lifeline for a good seller who was just unfairly shut down? Or is it just a high-stakes gamble against a casino that almost always wins? In the end, I think the answer doesn't just come down to how much you have to lose. It really depends on how disciplined and perfect you're prepared to be to win it all back.